All right, let's kick off and get right into it. So, the Forgotten Runes Wizard Cult need little introduction, right? They were one of the early projects. These guys minted out their Wizards collection, and Donna, feel free to jump in anytime to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was
Sure.
July 2021. I believe it was
Yep.
that Wizards minted. Awesome, one of the early projects to champion decentralized world building, right, with the Runiverse, and so let's sort of maybe go broad strokes for the moment, Dada, and then we'll start to unpack the specifics of what we're going to be talking about today, which is the Warrior Spin. But for the uninitiated amongst us, if you've waltzed into the NFT space in the last 2 months and you don't know the legendary Forgotten Runes Wizards cult, can you share with us a little about perhaps at a high level, how the team met, what inspired the beginnings of the Wizards cult back in July, and perhaps a little bit about how the project's evolved through to today.
Yeah, absolutely. So my partner Elf and I, we worked together for maybe 10 years. So we actually had worked on some iPhone games together, or in the early days of the iPhone, and we'd done some video games and had some success there. We'd kind of just like that tapered off for a few years, and then maybe the summer before we did Runes, we kind of reconnected. He and I had both been doing kind of NFTs on our. I actually some of the like earliest NFTs like 2018, like a few months after kind of the ERC 721 standard was finalized, and then Elf he'd been doing some of his art, which I think is having a resurgence now, like some of his one of ones on like Rarible, and we'd had like whatever moderate success doing that, but I think as before, whenever we kind of team up, it ends up, we're both like very different in so far as our skill sets, and so when I think as creative and magical, and when he does something, it's sort of just one man can do without code. And so I think when we team up, we're able to like kind of magnify each other's abilities really really well. So we've been talking about different projects that we wanted to do. We went through a lot of different ideas in the beginning. One of the early ideas that we talk about is he had three ideas. He was like, I don't even remember what the third one was, but one idea we were going to do Toast NFTs, and then we were going to do, and then another idea was Wizards, and I was like, oh yeah, the Toast thing. The Toast thing is where it's at. That's hilarious. Like, if people will die for NFT Toast, and we like started it. He like did some of the art. I like started to like do the programming. And then we looked, and then there was a project that already done it. We named it Toasties, and we looked and we did a search, and the people that did Chubbies, I guess, actually had already done Toasties. And so we were like, I guess we can't do Toasties anymore. Well, we should, maybe we should look back a second, look at the Wizards thing. And Elfie knew in the beginning he wanted to do Wizards first, but he was like going to go with me and do Toast or whatever. Um, so the repo even that we use internally is still called Toasties to this day. That's like how far we were. Anyway, so when it wasn't long actually that we realized that was a terrible idea, and we were looking at kind of the projects at the time. So we were in, I guess, like maybe June, and I think the like Apes, for example, was like April of that year. So we were a couple months after Apes, and it was definitely this period of kind of like PFP project, right? It was maybe like the golden era of PFP projects, insofar as there was a lot of them, I suppose. And one of the things that PFPs are great for is this idea you can use, right? Like you can kind of like easily recognize them, of course, like that utility is straightforward. But some of the things that we felt were like lacking there in two dimensions in particular. One was the fact that when you just have sort of like from like the head or like the shoulders up, you couldn't get a good feel for kind of like who the person was as a character, like who the character was as a whole being. You really just see like the top half. And so one of the things you'll notice with wizards is that they're like full body. And that's a very like deep and important part for us, which I'll get to. And I think the other part was that we looked at kind of these other collections, not the top tier ones, but I'm saying like so a lot of the like the rank and file, um, and just like the rarity wasn't that interesting to us. It's like, oh, look, the one that's all gold is the rarest one again. Like, and that the number of traits that they had right? For a 10,000 collection, maybe they have like, 100 traits or something or fewer. And so like the model was, right, like you would mint, you would look at rarity tools, and tools would tell you what's rare. Doesn't matter if it like looks good or that if the combos are good at all. It would just tell you what's rare, and you like buy the one that's rare, or you mint it and then flip it, and then like, everyone gets kind of bored of that because you just like want the next thing, and then you kind of like move on, right? So this was kind of the world that we were creating in. Elf and I have always really like tried to work to create characters. So Elf, for example, he and I, even when in school doing character creation, he's Nickelodeon. He's made shows with early with Google, and we for a long time have like loved this idea of kind of inventing characters. And I think one of the problems that you have when you try to invent a new character out of whole cloth is this idea that like you're sort of creating on your own. You not only have to create the character and their motivations, but you also have to create like the entire universe. And so I think that's maybe a third piece in terms of like what Forgotten means. The idea of being a collaborative universe, some sort of structure that you can build. So I'll touch on that a little bit more, but that's kind of like how we got our start. And so one of the things you notice with Forgotten Runes is that the characters are full body. Now maybe you want to crop it. Like if you see my Dota account, I actually even crop mine so it fits better in a PFP. But the characters of Forgotten Runes are intended to be entire characters. And then in terms of rarity, I could talk about that. But one of the things we really do with our system is more sophisticated than a lot of the other projects insofar as they kind of invented this concept of affinity, which sort of makes the characters group together, and then also, of course, the idea of like collaborative lore. But maybe I'll pause there. If you have any of those things you want to like zoom in on, I'm happy to talk about.
Wow. It's just great hearing you talk about the project, right? Like you can really get a sense of both how long you've been in the space and how deeply invested you are in the project that you're developing, which is great. I have a vision in my head of content this good and a project this developed, but as toast with condiments and utensils and things like that. Like it does. I can see the humor there, but what I want to do is try to draw us towards the mint. So this time there's going to be warriors. In your, I guess, smorgasbord of NFTs, you've got souls, beasts, and ponies. But this time around, people are going to be getting the warriors. And maybe if you could talk a little bit around specifically what the warriors are, how they're going to fit into this ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so the big idea behind Forgotten Runes Wizards Cult is this idea of decentralized story building. Maybe you want to make economically say decentralized brewing, or there's a list on Wikipedia which is worth looking at. It's called it's a list of highest grossing media franchises of all time. So if you're at a computer, look it up. It's the highest grossing media franchises of all time. And what you see there, and really the goal of Forgotten Runes is to be the top franchise on that list, right? We want to be the highest grossing media franchise of all time. So what's on there? You see Pokemon, Hello Kitty, Mickey Mouse, Winnie the Pooh, Star Wars, Mario, Marvel Cinematic Universe, Wizarding World, Harry Potter. So these are what we're going for. When you think about these kind of brands, these global mega brands, it's not just about like being a PFP collectible, but it's about creating a universe where there are stories from a lot of different angles, right? Look at Star Wars. How, not only are there the original trilogies and then the middle and then the new movies and then the Boba Fett show and the Mandalorian, right? And you have everything from like clothing and merch and costumes and fan fiction and stories. And so this is what we're aiming for. And we're doing this seriously. So you may have seen, for example, earlier this week, we dropped a trailer that we did in collaboration with Titmouse. We announced that we partnered with Derek Kolstad to write the upcoming series of the show. And so we very much take seriously this idea that like there is going to be a AAA like Hollywood level manifestation of the Forgotten Runes storyline at this level. And so, but what's different about it? What's different about us versus any of these other brands? And it's this idea that like the characters from these stories are owned by the token holders in the collection. That the token holders have a commercial right to these characters, right? So take Harry Potter for example. It's actually technically illegal. Like fan fiction for Harry Potter is very popular. Like I'm sure you've seen this subculture. There's whole groups of like forums and subreddits about people who like love Harry Potter and they'll write stories. You know, I think actually maybe the like most popular story about there's stories of where like Harry and Malfoy like they get older and then they realize they're in love and they like get together, right? Or there's like all these like alternate universes within the Harry Potter universe that people write about and then people love those stories. But it turns out that actually, when you look at kind of the nuts and bolts, it's actually illegal. That like if any of those stories like captured kind of the imagination of people, or that they tried to like publish it in a like large bookstore, or like actually commercialize kind of those stories that they've created within that world, it's actually illegal. You'll get a cease and desist from Wizarding World. You can't do it. And people say like people want to create and participate in these communities, and you can't. So with our universe, it's the exact opposite. We're basically saying you have a commercial right to your characters and we want you to use it. And in fact, we're creating this universe together. And that's one of the key ideas is that as we build on this, like as we go and make the show, for example, we're going to be drawing from the lore from our community. So, for example, on our website, we have the Book of Lore, which is it's a website where people can come and they can tell stories and upload pictures and paintings and songs about their character. And what we actually do is we actually draw on that Book of Lore when it comes time for us. Our company's name is Magic Machine. So Magic Machine is sort of like the centralized entity that's made up of myself, Elf, and Bear Snake, and of course our wonderful team. And when we, as Magic Machine, create content at the level of like we're working with Titmouse, for example, we draw from the Book of Lore and from the characters that have already been created in our Runeverse. So let me give you an example. If you actually look at the trailer, if you look at the very last frame of the trailer, which you can find as probably my pinned tweet if you haven't seen it. At the very last frame of the trailer, there is, in the middle of the trailer, there's actually a DJ scene. And that DJ scene is from an early pixel art animation done by one of our community members, Bread. And we just loved it so much that we were like, yes, we have to put that in the trailer. So something that was like originally this like little, 16 frame pixelated GIF, we actually rendered into this like high end like Titmouse style animation. At the very end of the trailer, you'll see there's a wizard who's holding a bell there, who's like wearing a masked hood. And that wizard is Magus Wazir. So Magus Wazir is this wizard that's very well known in our community for ringing a bell. You'll see in that frame that they're holding a bell. And every time that someone new joins our community, you'll see Magus Wazir tweet to them on Twitter and reply with a bell and say, "Oh, we got another one." And this person creates all sorts of like meme content and like funny videos, and they create all this content about their character. That this wizard Magus Wazir has all become like legendary within our minds. So we can't forget them. And when you look up Magus Wazir on Rarity Tools, we have about 10,000 wizards. Magus Wazir on Rarity Tools is like ranked like 9,500. Almost one of the most commonest wizards imaginable. In terms of if you were just going to be like classic PFP, oh, he's not gold, like what's my ranking, whatever, you'd see Magus Wazir is like quite low. But we have this saying in our community, and the saying is lore, not floor. And Magus Wazir is a perfect example of that because because it doesn't matter that character is not rare, quote unquote. That character is legendary through its owner's like own efforts, and so we felt that captured that idea so well that we were like, yes, we have to pay tribute to that in our trailer. So, yeah, so I think that's one of the like main ideas is that we're collaborating together to create this world where then, at the same time, what's different than from us just like taking Magus Wazir and putting it into the trailer and sort of like taking advantage of that is the owner of that token has commercial rights, right? So if they want to create Magus Wazir action figures, go for it. We have members in our community have started to do that because now actually when you have your character or that like moment that you created in the show, you own the commercial rights to commercialize that IP, and that's what's so different from what we're trying to do versus these other models, right? Like let's say that you're a fan of Thor, right? You can't own Thor. The closest thing you can come to owning Thor is like like owning a share of Disney stock, for example. But Disney does so many other things. Disney does a lot of other things that maybe you don't like care about or you don't even like. There's no way for you to kind of like get that ownership. Whereas with what we're doing for Forgotten Runes, of course, like you, Magus Wazir, you can own, Magus Devon of the Quantum Towns. So, okay, so that didn't answer your question about warriors, but that's like the idea of why do we need warriors? Yeah, I can talk about that. I've been talking a bit, so feel free to interrupt me.
No, not at all. I'm really enjoying the context, and it really does set the scene. I think people will resonate a lot with how much importance you're placing on community-owned content and community-developed content, which kind of feeds into the lore. Because who doesn't want to have their content produced and then elevated to that level of Titmouse trailer? Like to see your character in there based on the lore you have developed as part of the community, that's something special. So I think that's a really cool story.
Yeah,
on that
and absolutely, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, with Titmouse being brought in, they are a really fantastic animation studio. They've also recently done one of the TV shows I really like, Vox Machina, from Critical Role. Are they going to be partnering with you guys ongoing with the TV special? Are they going to be involved?
Yes. Yeah. So the way that it's set up is it's ourselves and Titmouse and Derek that are all sort of partners on the TV show. Sorry?
Oh, please go ahead.
Yeah. So we're like just so excited, right? Like we couldn't be happier. Like that, it's our really just our first choice all around. And so, I think that like Vox is an interesting case study. Insofar as like a couple things. Our show will be a bit different in terms of like tone. I think Vox has like a lot of humor up front, and I think that I'm not writing the show, so TBD, but I don't think that our show is going to have like so much like on the nose humor. Like it'll of course be there, so it'll of course be there, but I think the tone is going to be a bit different. I think another thing that's interesting about Vox, for example, is they tried to sell that show and it wasn't really like getting picked up by streamers in the beginning. So then they went to Kickstarter. And once they raised whatever it was, $15 million from Kickstarter, then they were able, that actually kind of like changed everyone's opinions, and they were able to kind of, make the show, get it funded and get it created. And in return, what their like funders got for that $50 million, they got like a poster, right? Like if you look at their Kickstarter rewards, they get, a signed stuffy or something from the merch. And so I think, again, to me, this is another case where just like NFTs feel so much of a better model, and like literally the model of the brands of the future, which is this idea that kind of like, what we plan with like the Warrior Mint in particular is this idea that we'll be able to kind of like, well, we're planning on funding the show ourselves, and so whether it comes through Warriors or other means or whatever, that's our plan. And basically that lets us get control, and that lets us keep community integrity, that lets us draw from the book of lore, that lets us even do things as sort of like novel as kind of hopefully pay royalties back to the community. I think how the regulatory concerns about like how that works practically, I think, are still a bit cloudy. We're working through that. But, the other model, so there's two ways that you can basically sell a show, right? Like one is that you go to the streamers and you say, oh, I have this idea. Can you give me the money to like make it? And then they'll say yes. They'll say like, sure, we'll give you like some money, but you have to do everything we say, right? And so like, it doesn't work for us because we have too many weird things, right? Like NFT weird to people. Like the fact that we're giving our intellectual property rights is like really weird to them and like kind of scary. And the fact that we want to like even give royalties back to our community, they'll just like it's too much for them, right? And so instead, what we actually need to do is be able to say like, hey, like we have the money, we're doing this show, and like this is what we're doing. It's our vision. We have these really cool people involved. It's going to be really high quality, and then pitch it from there. So one of the things that we're doing, for example, for our P rights, it's just so different from a traditional model. I was talking to our lawyers a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking through how we're going to do the rights, and we'll publish a blog post on this soon. And they said to me this was like a real quote. They said, they're like, this is exactly the opposite of how this is usually done, is what they told me. They're like, Disney would never structure their rights in this way in a million years. And I was just like, okay, perfect. That's exactly how we're going to do it then, because I think that's really our angle, is this idea that we're like giving up a bit of control, right? A bit of control about what I don't know, traditional IP holders, how they typically view their intellectual property with like a tight fist, is just not how the world works anymore. And so it's really our goal to kind of like turn that upside down. So with that said, let's talk about Warriors, right? So we have these other collections within our sets. So within our world, I'll say we have the Wizards, which is originally. Then in October of last year, we did Forgotten Souls. The mechanic there was a bit tricky. What we did is we airdropped flames. Maybe you could think of it as something like the Ape Serum, right? We airdropped flames to our holders. But unlike the Ape Serum, when you used it, you actually had to burn your wizard. You had to sacrifice your wizard. And unlike serums, you had a 9 in 10 chance of getting a soul version of your wizard, but a 1 in 10 chance of getting an undesirable. And so, I mean, at the time, I think that I don't know exactly the numbers, right? But the wizard's floor was something like I don't know exactly what the numbers were, but I think that the flame and the soul at the time were, I don't want to guess prices wrong. But all that to say, so you basically had to burn both the flame token and the soul token. About 1,000 of them have been used since then. There's about 500 remaining. And so that gave us wizards and souls. Then around Christmas, we were putting together merch boxes. They took a really long time. We wanted to be really good and fancy, and we wanted to do a custom box and all these things and like all these surprises. And merch just takes so long, especially when you're trying to coordinate a bunch of different parts. It would have been a lot easier to just like let people buy a hat or something. But no, we wanted it to be like special and feel like high end and be just like something you loved. And so, but they took a long time. And so then, we were saying, oh, there's going to be all these surprises in the merch box. And by surprises, we meant like, like some stickers or something, and there are pins. And then like people were getting really out of hand. They're like, oh, I bet it's this, I bet it's that. And I'm like, and I joked and I was like, no, we're not going to tell people that there's any surprises. If you say surprises, people are going to think you mailed them a pony. Like there's like a pony attached to their box, right? And so we kind of like joked about that, and they're like, then I think it was Loch Ness or someone. I think it was Locke. She was like, wait, what if we actually could send them a pony? And we were like, oh, that's a great idea. So so whatever, we whipped it up. Elf did the art, and we actually printed physical like cards with a QR code on the back. And it was a surprise. When people bought the merch box, they didn't know that there was going to be an NFT attached to it. We for sure kept that a surprise. And so the merch box, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think that the merch box costs around $300. And then the floor for ponies right now is like 2.5 ETH or something. And so, not to make it transactional, but like for the people who ended up getting that sort of first edition merch box, they also got like the pony NFT in there, and we hope to use those ponies within the Runiverse game that we have upcoming. I haven't mentioned that we're doing a video game. So we're doing a game. So we have that's a whole other topic. There's like 30 people working on the Runiverse game. I'll get there in a second. So we did ponies, and you'll be able to ride them in the game. The game world is like humongous, and you are not going to want to walk. So you're going to want so you can go fast, or at least some sort of amount. So we did those in December. Okay, and then fast forward until maybe April. Like December to April was a bit of like a slow period in terms of like, new tokens for us, insofar as that like really what we were just trying to nail down in that period was like getting the game kind of solid and right, which we did, but it's still good in time. We just launched Beasts. The idea of Beasts is sort of sounds like 7 where we are 7 legendary creatures. Man, Kelpie, there's 7 of them. You can look on our website.
I might just jump in and let you know that the audio is getting a little bit ruggy. I don't know if you're in a strange spot or if you want to reconnect, but we're getting sort of 30-second timeouts.
Oh, no. Okay, yeah, I'll come back.
Yeah, no problem.
Intermission music.
Thank you for that, mate. I also just completely forgot we're recording this, so hopefully we can edit that part out.
I thought your rendition of elevator music was spot on, Poop. You don't need to edit anything out. All right, let's see if we can't bring the good Dada back.
Yeah, I gotcha. I earned dinner tonight. All right, carry on.
Yes, sir. Do we have Dada coming back on?
Yeah, hey, hello.
There
is
we
that
go.
Any better? What do you think?
Yep.
Sounds good.
Okay, I've got, I have actually an atrocious internet connection at the moment. Where did I leave off? I can kind of roll back if it's interesting.
Just the last minute.
Okay, yeah. So about a month ago we did Beasts. And so Beasts were an auction where we did one every day for 7 days. And auctions are so fun because you can create something that's like big and beautiful and kind of like see how your community's like biggest holders value it. And we really love that. At the same time, our community has a lot of smaller holders. And while they were like excited about the prospect of like watching the theatrics, it's not as fun when you can't participate at all. And so we kind of were just thinking through that of like, how can we make sure that everyone thinks that Beasts are a fun time? And so from there, we invented this like system of doing Beast Spawn. So how it worked was at the end of each day, so for example, the Chimera, after the beast is auctioned, then 42 random holders were selected to mint Chimera spawn. And then so on for each beast. So for each of the 7 beasts, there was actually a mini collection of another 7 spawn creatures that came from it. And we'll use these within the ecosystem in the future. Actually, even to unlock the gate, well, there was a whole thing with the unlocking ceremony. I'll skip it. So, but basically then, yeah, if you didn't claim your beast spawn that day, it rolled over to someone else the next day. And so we had kind of this like rolling system where you would check in every day, and there were a couple of different lists that you might be able to mint to beast spawners. Super fun. So, okay, so that brings us to, so all those collections are very small, right? Like all these collections other than Wizards were maybe like 500 tokens. There's like, well, there's like 1,000 souls, but they came from the Wizards, so they're non-dilutive. There's maybe 500 ponies, 7 beasts. Warriors is something that we planned for the beginning. If you go back to the archive and look up that very first roadmap from June, first roadmap, day 1, it has Forgotten Runes Warriors Guild is like at the very end of that. It's something we've always wanted to do. And the reason is really just that, like, if you think about it, like, Might and Magic, Swords and Sorcery, Brain and Brawn, Wizards and Warriors are an archetype that just existed forever. And so For us, like warriors is not like a companion drop like pets, right? Like it's not like, oh, you got your warrior, your wizard, and now you get like the dog for your wizard. No, warriors are like their own thing. They're like, in some sense, like equal footing in terms of like narrative. We talk about the great warriors of our past in the same way we talk about the great wizards as well, right? They're just like two different archetypes that are both eternal that always have kind of collaborated, and they've been friends and enemies and frenemies and antagonize one another and help one another through like every story that we have since Gilgamesh. And so I think this idea that you have like wizards and warriors who exist within the same universe is just like it's not even obvious. It's like required, and so that's why we're kind of bringing these new characters into the Runiverse, because we just feel that like the story is ready, the community is ready, and we just want to see them and hear their stories.
So I love this data, and you've provided just such a, I don't know how to describe it, but I think the best word is lush. It's almost as if you have a lush ecosystem, that's just got so many different elements to it, specifically built initially anyway around the wizards, right? So now we're getting into sort of the warriors, and from what I'm hearing you say, it sounds as though they're actually going to be just about equals. Is that right? In your Mintonomics, you state the utility of the game, show, airdrops, and lore will continue with the warriors and wizards side by side. So I note that language. Does this mean effectively, the warriors are equal to the wizards in terms of overall utility?
I think that like it depends on what you mean by this. I think that like if you look in lore, would you say that like wizards and warriors are equal? And I think there's like differences, right? So like wizards have magic and warriors don't. Um, but like if a wizard gets out of hand, like a warrior can just hit him over the head with the butt of his sword, right? And like that's not going to help. Like magic isn't going to help you. It's sort of like the wrench problem of security, right? Like cryptography itself is magic, and no one can like break your private key, and so that's a sort of sorcery in its own, that you can figure out the program to protect your private key. But at the same time, it can be just like canceled by someone showing up to your door with a wrench and like hitting you over the head and like forcing you to give it over. So I think that there's like a key difference in just sort of like they're not the same thing. I think that if you look at the lore, you definitely see this idea of kind of wizards tending to be like more heady and kind of like shepherding the warriors. So look at like Lord of the Rings, for example, right? In Lord of the Rings, the wizards are far fewer than the warriors, and they're sort of like a guide to the warriors, and they kind of help them along the way. And there's almost like not quite enough. I mean, maybe the warriors resent them being an authority figure, but there is a sense of kind of like a higher knowledge of the bigger picture with wizards in like the classic archetype. And so I do think that, like for example, like the wizards, well, the wizards are rarer than the warriors in just by nature. If we're talking tokenomics, just by nature of the supply within the Runiverse, so they're different in that regard. I also think just narratively, right, when you see what we create kind of in the show, again, like wizards have magic and warriors don't, and that doesn't make one person any better than the other, but they're for sure different dynamics. If we're talking in terms of like utility for the tokens, like yes, warriors will be usable in the Runiverse game, and wizards will be usable in the Runiverse game. We're doing a 3D model to use for metaverses like Nifty Island for all of the wizards first, and we'll do it for the souls as well, and then for the warriors. So maybe there's a certain production ordering, but we're going to do it all for all of them. I don't know if that answers your question.
It definitely did. And I think the one thing missing there is, warriors carry big, gigantic body length swords.
Yes. They do.
And I think that
or an axe.
In clubs, and nunchucks and boomerangs and flamethrowers.
Flamethrowers, damn. Okay, so that leads me to the next question, and that is a rarity within the Warriors. So the items that are going to be equipable, the attributes on the collection, how are they going to be structured? Are there going to be some one-on-ones? Are there some highly rare items to look out for when these reveal? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely, yeah. So one of the things that I mentioned earlier is like when we looked at Wizards, when we were creating Wizards, I believe in Wizards the collection there are 340 traits for a 10K collection. At the time, I think it was the most of any project that I had seen, of any major project anyway. And I think in the beginning, collectors were maybe a little confused because there were just so many, right? Again, it wasn't so obvious that the all gold one was the most rare. And I think that's like by design, right? Because we're trying to create something that's like rich and intricate and where you can have 10,000 characters, not 10,000 of the same person wearing a different outfit. And so with Warriors, we're continuing that. I was looking at the parts today, and I think we might have crossed 600 traits. They're not all used within every character. There's a lot of one-on-ones in the collection. Let me just take a roll back, which is within those traits, one of the things that I noticed right out of the gate is that when you mix and match traits randomly, as you see a lot of collections do, it looks really stupid because you get kind of like, this wizard with like, a yellow hat and the legs don't match and he's like holding a pickle or something. And then like some people love collections like that because they're just so ridiculous, but we didn't want it to be ridiculous. We wanted it to be good. And so what we kind of came up with was this idea that we call affinity. And affinity is sort of like, I don't know, you can think of it as something like art direction or almost like a gravity between different parts to like cause them to be drawn together in an artistic way. It's like we give an essence to each warrior. So and each wizard. So like for each wizard we might say, oh, we want this wizard should be like earthy. And so what does that mean? Well, we're going to pull traits that are like, he's going to have like wild hair with a leaf in it. And he might have like brown clothes and a dog and a wooden stick. Or we might say, oh, this wizard's like magic is like death, right? And so I'll wear this black cloak, and it'll be random, but it'll maybe be like a skull or a crow familiar. And so if you look at kind of like we have our own marketplace, Forgotten Market, where you can find it. If you look at the high affinity wizards, what you'll notice just right off the bat is they're aesthetically pleasing. The parts seem to work together. Right, and there's no way that you could handcraft that 10,000 times, but there's no way that you could get those things with it being completely random either. And so I don't know. That's just sort of through kind of like the secret sauce of Wizards and Code and my collaboration with Elf that kind of brought that to life. And Warriors has the same thing. It's almost like V2 of Affinity, and so far is like we've gotten better at doing it together. It's our second try. We have a better understanding of like how it works. You write this code and it actually becomes its like living being on its own. And we've both kind of learned how to like control that beast a little bit. And then the Warriors collection, the Wizards collection is actually 50 by 50 pixels scaled up. And the Warriors collection is actually 60 by 60. So there's actually a little bit more room to play with. If you actually compare the Warriors, you can feel that they like look a little, let's say, richer in it, just because you have that little bit of pixel space. We actually even expanded the palette a little bit for Warriors, and frankly, I just think that Elf is getting maybe a little bit better at pixel art, and I'm getting better at coding the affinities all together. And so what you have is just this like gorgeously rich collection of a diverse range of characters from like tons of different kind of like classes and species. There are kobolds and tigers and lizard people and all kinds of like really interesting characters within the Warriors collection. It's looking really good. So even within that, one of the things that Elf loves to do is kind of create one of ones. So you see this in the Wizards collection, right? We have Merlin, we had the Goblin King, we had the Wizard of Oz, we have um, all sorts of different like one of ones like golden skeletons and pumpkin heads and things like that. And then within souls, we had plenty of one of ones like Marie Laveau. We've had gosh, I have to make sure that I say the ones that have been revealed yet and not the ones that are coming. There are still a few souls that are super rare that have not been revealed yet, and I'm like really looking forward to it. But you know, it's a big commitment to burn a soul because you might get a jelly donut. And within the Warriors collection, there are plenty, and they are gorgeous. And I'm just like beaming, imagining the feeling that it will be when people mint them. And so, yes, there are a lot of one of ones within the Warriors collection. They're going to be great.
That's awesome. And they can get a jelly donut. So I'm assuming that's like your participation award for burning some ETH.
So yeah, early on in the cult, like really, really early on, like in probably end of May or June last year, people were trying to like get in the allow list. I don't even think we had an allow list for the mint, but people were wondering, they're like, oh, what do I have to do to get one of these? When's the mint? What do I have to do to get in the mint list? And Alpha was like so frustrated because I'm sure you've been in Discord servers where this happens, where you like get a moment where you have just like person after person after person just coming in and asking the exact same question over and over, right? And you're just like, are you serious right now? Like I literally answered the question for the person before you. You just have to read one message to get the answer that I'm giving you about when to mint this. And Alpha's just like so mad. He's almost like, what do I have to do to mint these wizards? And he was like, sacrifice your soul to a jelly donut. And that just kind of stuck. And so yeah, jelly donuts are kind of a recurring theme in our community, and it was on the original roadmap. And yes, if you are one of the unlucky, undesirable souls and you burn your wizard, you may in fact get a jelly donut in return. Though, you know, we call them undesirables, but I think the last one sold for like 60. So make your own decisions there.
I will sacrifice my soul for the jelly donut, Mick. Haha, you can, you can keep your big swords. I just love this, Dada. Thank you for all of the context that you've been providing us thus far.
Yeah.
I would like to pull it back to let's go back to the Warriors and some of the benefits. So we've talked briefly about of course the art, which is phenomenal. Now all the Warriors are going to come with free 2D and 3D versions, right? You mentioned we'll see them usable in Nifty Island, no doubt. If they're rigged 3D models, they're probably going to be usable elsewhere potentially. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but I'm assuming if they're a rigged 3D model, they'll work in, VR chat, Somnium Space, and so on and so forth. And they've got the 2D versions in World Wide Web 3, which is really cool. And you mentioned, there's a bit of a pecking order, right? Which is to be expected, given you're going to be generating these assets for the Wizards as well. But for Warrior Minters specifically, right? In, 4 days' time, you're going to mint. When can users expect to see these, and will they be separate NFTs or are they going to be downloadable assets?
Yeah, I have to admit that it'll be a few months, right? Like, I think getting the walk cycle turnarounds for Wizards took us something like 3 months, which I recognize as kind of an eternity in NFT world, but it just takes a long time. So I think we're hoping to get all of like the 2D walk cycles by like Q4 of this year, and then the 3D models the same if we can. It's it's a lot of parts. So yeah, I admit that it will be a bit of time before those are available. That said, once you have them forever. So we also are going to try to hire more pixel artists, and we have a firm who's helping us with the 3D models as well. But yeah, we're hiring artists like crazy because we need help. Doing the pixel art takes quite a long time. But at the same time, so the walk cycles that we have on our website are downloadable, as well as the 3D models. So it's attached to the NFT itself, which is kind of maybe, let's say, disliked in some sense by who want a lot of drops insofar as like you can't just like get your walk cycle or 3D model and then dump it for ETH. But for us, it's really important that they stay together because we don't see your character as just the like pixel art NFT, right? That's almost like the cover of the character. In fact, we think of the pixel art as like the seed of the character. Part of the reason why we did pixel art is because it allows anyone to come in and like contribute and add on to it, right? If we had done this super high resolution titmouse style, line art, the skill, the requisite skill level required to contribute onto that, it doesn't leave any room for your imagination, right? And so the pixel art for us is not just about like nostalgia. It's actually about being almost like the seed that you actually fill in the details with your mind, that you actually contribute to this character. And so we have, kids like teenagers or less who are able to like use Aseprite and kind of make pixel art animations. It doesn't require a lot of artistic skill to do some simple pixel art animations, right? And so I think that's a really important part of this is that we don't separate the walk cycles from the NFT. We don't separate the 3D models from the NFT. They're kind of attached to one another. And we've even talked about doing like, show style wizards, right? Maybe we do actually hire some artists from Titmouse to help us reinterpret all of the wizards in the style that they're going to be in the show. And you have this kind of like, American anime style version collection of the wizards that you can use as your PFP. Now, how do we do that with regards to tokenomics? I'm not sure, right? There's things like Doodles. They have interesting models where like you wrap the token or maybe it's just downloadable. I'm not exactly sure. But what I'm getting at is this idea that like you are your wizard in all of its representations. It's the NFT is this like dynamic digital object where you can represent yourself in all mediums. It's not, the NFT is not just like the 60 by 60 pixel warrior. So, and in terms of like when the sheets will be available, the walk cycles that we have on our own website, we made, those are what's being used in Nifty Island. We signed a deal with a game studio called Bisonic, which is the studio itself is young, but the people who work there are not. They've worked on all sorts of games like World of Warcraft and things like that. And they have a team right now of about 30 people, and I don't know the exact number, but I think more than 10 of them are artists. And when they do the Runiverse game, which we'll be able to start using really within a couple of months, they've actually upscaled all of the wizards, and they didn't end up actually using our walk cycles. They're making their own walk cycles, which is like an up-resed version interpretation of the wizards. And so, the timeline for when you can download our sprite sheets and the timeline for when you can like use them in the game are a bit decoupled. And they have more artists than we do, though. I think that needs to change. So the short answer to your question is like it's going to be a while. Yeah, we're not going to have them in June, for example, because it's just so much art. But that said, that when they're created, they're attached to the NFT forever to be used in any 2D metaverse or any 3D metaverse forever. But it'll take some time.
I like to see the attachment. That system works really well. So I think you're going down a good path there. And we have been sort of teetering around the game a little bit. So let's try to dive into the game that's being built. So Magic Machine have partnered with a game studio, which is Bisonic. They're going to produce a Web3 video game called The Forgotten Runiverse. And this pioneers a create-to-earn concept. It's going to have crafting, building, battling, socializing. Can you talk about the create-to-earn element? Because I think that's probably going to be something which appeals to a lot of the listeners today. And when you talk about that create-to-earn component of the game, can you also share how Warriors are going to fit into that ecosystem and maybe how they differ to the Wizards?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the game itself has let's say like three main core loops, right? So there is a social loop, which is kind of like you might imagine with kind of like a social metaverse like World Wide Web 3, where you kind of like there are you go and talk with your friends and you and you can go to concerts, we'll have like concerts in the game and like events and things like this. The second one would be kind of like a collecting crafting mechanic. And so this would be where you go around and you're able to like harvest resources, right? You can harvest, apples from the orchard or limestone from rocks. And then you can kind of take those resources as inputs and you can craft items. You can craft swords and armor and spells and particularly your home. You can craft sort of like what color you want it to be, the items that you have in your interior, what color do you want your wallpaper, all these things. And then the third game loop is kind of like a questing, battling MMO RPG like style mechanic, like World of Warcraft, for example. So this would be where you would go with your friends and you have your party and you enter dungeons, you go and fight monsters, you enter battles, and then you defeat the monsters, you collect coins and resources from that monster, and then you can kind of use those within the game economy. So this idea that you create to earn, what does that mean? Well, I think in the same way that we want to like encourage like lore creation and this kind of like how you're able to commercialize the lore and the IP of your wizard, we also want to make sure that we keep that sort of idea within the game. So the land is a good example. One of the problems that you can kind of have with a fixed land supply within a game like this is this idea that the landholders buy their land as like a speculative investment. They don't play the game. They don't participate in the economy. They don't contribute to the community, and it just sort of sits there fallow. In this game, you can collect resources on the land, but you actually have to use the land in able to benefit from it. So you actually have to build in. So as a landowner, you'll be able to, for example, set like taxes, or even more granular than that, like Discord style permissions, where you can say, okay, maybe I'm not using this plot, but I want to let someone else build on it, or I want to like let other people harvest. I've got an apple orchard on here, other people can harvest on it. As the owner, you can get a tax on sort of the apples that are created there, but only if you build infrastructure on the land, right? Only if you create on that land. So in this sense, create to earn is the idea of like creating by participating in the game if you want to kind of harvest the full economic benefit of the produce of your land. Even as an owner, right, you have to be able to come back and contribute to that land and to keep it up and not just like let it fall apart. So that's one way. Another way is just this idea in terms of like building items, that like as you go and you are collecting resources, right? Some of these resources have like different colors, right? You can create different dyes, and then you can actually customize different objects and sell them to other players within the world, right? So you can imagine, for example, you craft some sword and then you find a gem and you're able to like customize that sword or that particular gem, or you can paint a painting and mint it as an NFT and sort of sell to someone else and they can hang it within their house. And so I think really, or another way that you can do this is even by doing shows. So for example, we have people in our community who like work with musicians, and you can imagine, as you've seen in games of like Fortnite, for example, where you have concerts in game, there are things that we want to do like that, where you can basically hold events in game where people can come and participate and do like plays or sort of like creative endeavors, even as like which are even linked to the in-game economy. So really for us, it's this idea around like it's not just a grind battler that's going to like turn into your next job, but this idea that it becomes like a playful, creative experience that's like fun and a fun way to hang out with your friends.
That is really, really, it's a big undertaking, right? This is going to be quite a multifaceted game. Is there a timeline at all on the I guess the alpha of the game and then the roadmap for that game, or is it sort of a roadmap item in itself?
So there's a whole other company working on that game. So that game is actually so the Magic Machine team, the execs, I guess you could say, or the founders are myself, Elf, and Bear Snake. And we have a team of about 10 of us that are full-time working on kind of the NFTs and the NFT NYC party and Warriors and all of these kind of like the core NFT efforts, the comic book, the show. The game is a deal with our gaming partner Bysonic. So the executives from Bysonic come from a studio called Maximum Games, and they have produced a lot of games that are like doing quite well. And their company right now is, I believe it's about 30 people now, full-time dedicated just to the Runiverse game. I believe when they're fully staffed, if they're able to hire, they're planning on this full staff being somewhere around 40. And so this team, they've worked on games like Elder Scrolls Online, Diablo, Overwatch, Rainbow Six Siege, Batman Origins. So like it's an experienced team of kind of like game developers and publishers. A lot of their background is in console games. So like they, for example, have games in Target and that you can buy on Switch, for example. This game is a little bit different insofar as as you know, well, I'm not sure if you do. So with games, the gaming industry, like the platforms are not, they're scared of cryptocurrency, right? Insofar as like, because you cut out their app store, right? So you can't have a crypto game in the Apple App Store. You can't have a crypto game in Steam. You can't have a crypto game on like Switch or any of like Xbox or any of the physical consoles, right? Because just the regulatory concerns are just too like vague, and the economic concerns are the fact that you can basically cut around their marketplace fees. And so so this team started this new company Bysonic because it doesn't sort of, because you can kind of operate within those bounds. And so we're going to do a browser-based game at first, but it's built based on web technology so that like, as the second that we're able to kind of get it on mobile devices, I think that's like part of the plan. Though, of course, I still think the ergonomics of like, how do you do a crypto game on the phone, no one has figured out yet, because none of the platform holders, like gatekeepers, have like let anyone try yet. And so I do think that like, but that'll happen, right? Do we all think that like they could hold out forever, right? That you'll never be able to like properly participate in crypto from your phone? Like, of course not. Like, it's just a matter of time before those walls kind of come down. And so I think we want to be prepared for that. But that said, you're right. It's a very ambitious game. And honestly, there's no way that like, Elf and I can create this game. Elf and I got our start creating games. And we've done indie games that have maybe made like, I don't know, $1 million or something, which like over like years. But like to do a game of this scale that's like multiplayer plus what we're trying to do with Forgotten Runes, it's just impossible for us to do this game. We needed an experienced team. So I was actually friends with the founder of Bysonic, and actually I believe it was like the day after that we minted, I texted her and I was actually a bit scared, and I was like, this person's name. I was like, we just minted out these NFTs and they want us to do a game. I don't know how to do a game. And she texted me back. She's like, well, I know how to make a game, and that's how the conversations had started. And so, we talked to them. It took, some time to kind of work out the deal, get everything in order. But the timeline there is that the land sale for that game should be in June, I think. So we've already did a private round for about around 15% of the land. So the investors in that round would be, for example, Dialectic. So Dialectic is kind of like the famous NFT collectors. They bought some of like people's pieces like Human One. And they were also really early. They were really early Forgotten Runes supporters. I actually don't know if I've told this story publicly. I think I have, and I don't think they'll mind. On our minting day, I published a blog post on how to mint from the smart contract, and I said in the comments, I was like, don't use this because I'm not going to give you a refund if you accidentally overpay. And sure enough, I get a text that afternoon. Someone was like, oh, can you help me out? I meant to send 0.82 ETH to your contract, and I accidentally sent 82 ETH. Can you send that 82 ETH back? And like, I was just like thinking like, is this a scam? Like, I'm just gonna send this random dude like $170,000 just because he like sent me a telegram or whatever. Like, so I like had to go around to my friends and I was like, can you look at this transaction? Like, is this guy scamming me? And so, I got on the phone with him. He obviously wasn't. He was just like, yes. And like when I got on the phone with him, he like wasn't concerned at all. Like that was the one thing that I remember being struck by with Elf was like this guy sent us like $170,000 and he's like he wants it back, but he wasn't like stressed. Like if I had done that at the time, I'd be like stressing out. Like I was texting him, I was like, I'm ready to call, and he like didn't get back to me for like half an hour, and I'm like, no, if I had done that to someone, I'm like picking up your call right away. I'm not leaving my desk. So whatever. So we have a call, we send them back with their funds, and it's fine. So anyway, so that was folks from Dialectics because they've been there from like completely day one, and then when it came time to when we did the Great Burning in October, they actually have a bunch of wizards and they all dressed up. They dressed up like as wizards and as like in their staff. They like took all these photos and they burned it and they like read a chant, like they read a group chant on the Discord live. So they've just been with us in the beginning. They're wonderful. I love them so much. They've been incredibly helpful. It also includes 776, which is Alexis Ohanian's firm. We have Nick from One Confirmation, and there's a whole other host. I don't want to gloss over anyone, but there's a round of folks who were also involved in that round, and they're just super believe in what we're doing. And one of the special things that we were able to sort of do in that deal was those investors didn't get a discount relative to the public sale price. One of the things that was really important to me is that we weren't kind of like, I just wanted the community to get a fair deal relative to what the private investors were doing, because it's really our community that comes and like creates the lore and that like is building the world and is with us like all the time. I mean, some of our investors are too, but the point stands, which is like, I wanted it to be fair both in the private round and the public round. And we optimistically, knock on wood, we expect that the land sale will be kind of oversubscribed and people won't be able to buy maybe so many plots. And so the private sale investors did get maybe a bigger allocation, but at the same time they also have vesting, whereas the public sale will not. And so we're just so thankful that they believe in our vision for the game and what that's going to be, and that they were willing to like kind of agree to taking the same price as the community. So that public sale, I believe, is scheduled for the end of June. And to be clear, that's not purely a Magic machine kind of sale. Like the Warrior sale is us. That sale is like a it's a land sale round to help with the game. And it's from Bisonic and Magic Machine together to do the game. So all that to say, you're saying, wow, this is a very ambitious game. This is like crazy. You're just a little NFT team. Like, how are you ever going to accomplish this? And the answer is, we couldn't. We have this like really amazing team of like 30 people who have like their own company, who have like made video games and shipped video games and debugged them and hired developers and artists. And they have their own Twitter. You can see in kind of the art that they're creating of like the swamps and the beaches and the homes, and it's just looking really beautiful. So the Warriors will be able to be playable in that game as well.
Very cool. Very cool. This is I actually, how much have you actually disclosed of your upcoming land sale? Look, we're not going to get too much into it, but how many land plots are there? Just a quick sidebar question.
I don't know that we've actually published these, so you're getting super alpha. But oh man, now I have to say it right. Well, big asterisk because I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but I believe that we're going to do 70,000 plots in the whole world, but we're not going to sell all 70,000 in one go. Like, I think that when we do this land sale, I think that the number of plots that will be like minted in total is probably going to be less than 10,000.
Wow. Gotcha. Okay.
I
don't want to stitch you
really,
out. So.
Well, one of the things that's really kind of important to us is that we like some games sell all the plots up front, just day one. We're just going to sell all the plots. Can you use it? No. Can you see what kind of land you have? No. Like maybe you can see like traits or something, but it's just like they sort of use it as this kind of like I don't know, speculative fundraising mechanism, and I just feel that like sets the whole game on a bad foot, like right at the beginning. One of the things that was really important for us is that like when you mint it, like the second that you mint it, I want you to be able to like walk around in it. Now, is the whole game going to be done? No. Like, are you going to have all of the crafting in the economy? No. Like, but what we wanted is that like we're going to sell plots as you can use them. We're not trying to like we want this game to be a game that people play for fun, right? It's not play to earn insofar as like play to earn just turns into like a job. And for us, it's really important that the game is fun. Own the land or playing the game, and so um, part of maybe the downside there is that like we're slower to release those tokens because of the fact that like we have to build the game. You have to build the map before you want to sell the tokens.
I'm so bullish on you guys. I it's hard to articulate, but it, to all of our listeners, we sit across the table, well, metaphorically sometimes, from many different teams, but it's I feel pretty bullish about you guys, Dada. You're doing a phenomenal job of fielding out questions today. So a very big thank you. First of all, now let's swing it away from the land sale here. I feel like we were going a little into uncharted territory, and I don't want to stitch you up. So we'll pull it back from the land. But that's really interesting, right? So you mentioned when you mint the tokens, which are minting in June, you want people to be able to play in them or move around in them, which is pretty interesting, which sort of implies there might be some finished product potentially, or at least some early iteration, which is pretty cool. I'm just speculating, I'm just spitballing.
Yeah.
But
multiplayer works in dev already, but like so that we want to have that in June.
Okay, so the Warriors, which are minting in 4 days, are going to be playable in the Runiverse, of which is already working in dev, at least multiplayer, the multiplayer elements.
Yes, with the caveat that like I don't think you'll be able to play as your warrior in June, right? Like I think there might be an intermediate time where you have to like represent as like some sort of like stock avatar for a time if you have a warrior. If you have a wizard, I'll have to ask. I'll have to ask if we'll have wizards like representing as your wizard in June, but you will be able to like connect and play and walk around. It'll be fun.
No, you're totally fine, Dada. So thank you very much. I feel like we got a little bit of early access alpha here. So thank you for that little nugget. We do appreciate it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's pivot away from that now, and sort of we're coming up onto an hour, just over an hour here. So it is soon time to wrap up. But before that, of course, big congratulations on your recent announcement, right? So you actually briefly mentioned this right at the beginning. So just 2 days ago, I believe it was, the Forgotten Runes Wizards Cult was featured on Variety magazine with Derek Kolstad, the creator of John Wick, having been tapped to develop your animated series, right? Forgotten Runes Wizard Cult. And we've, talked a little bit about that already. How can Warrior NFT holders look to potentially be a part of this series? And in the same vein, how can Warrior NFT holders, right, minting in 4 days' time, look to influence any future IP, such as the animated series that's coming out?
Oh yeah, so we have a warrior in the trailer. When you look actually at the thumbnail, so if you have that Variety article in front of you, I don't know if you do, and then you have the YouTube version of the video. It's actually on that last frame, which is the frame that has Magus Wazir that we opened with the bell. And then in the center left, there is a witch putting her rune on the door. This I could talk more about this, but this idea of putting your rune on the door is this idea of putting your mark on the world, right? It's sort of a metaphor for kind of like writing your lore, telling your story, speaking your truth, right? So the second wizard, excuse me, she's putting her mark on the door. There's a green witch holding a key, and she has her arm around a warrior. And so I think that the idea of like, how do you take participation in kind of the IP creation of what's going to happen in the show is around this idea of like making your warrior legendary in the same way that it applies for wizards, which is around like picking a warrior that speaks to you and like just sort of creating in truth. One of the things that we talk about is it's not about kind of like necessarily being a great like painting artist, right? It's not really even about being a great writer necessarily. It's just about trying to like create something kind of in earnest, that like you find the people around you that it resonates with them. So I think that that's kind of like how as a warrior holder you can participate, and I think it's for sure in our mind that warriors. The show is not just about wizards. The show is about wizards and warriors, and that's even in the trailer. But yeah, I mean Derek agreeing to write the show is just like a dream. So we've chatted with him a few times, and whenever we meet with him, it's just, oh man, I just love him so much. I'm like so happy that he agreed to write with us. When you listen to him talk, so we had him on Wizard Wednesday this last Wednesday, and you can hear some of it. And he when he speaks and tells stories, it's like a jazz musician kind of like playing along to a standard, where it's almost like this like effortless, like music to a tune that you like kind of get, but it's like still colorful and really interesting. And he has like this encyclopedic knowledge of like every movie, and he's like, well, it's like less like that scene from Saving Private Ryan, and more like that scene from Lord of the Rings where Gimli's doing this, and like just like fact after fact and like narrative after narrative and archetype after archetype. He's just internalized these stories so deeply that like he'll come up with a story and a narrative for like an idea for an episode in like 5 minutes, and I'm just like captivated. I'm just like sitting with my jaw open, but I'm also like smiling like a goofball because I like want to watch the episode that he's describing to me. And to him, I could never write it in a million years. I'm not like that kind of a storyteller. And for him, it just feels like almost effortless when he's sharing it. And so I think like, yeah, I don't know if you've seen his movies, but they're like the right mix of kind of like kind of action and narrative and like a little bit of humor and just eternal truths. One of the things that I love about him too is that he's like inherently hopeful in kind of the way that he's going to approach writing our show. You can tell that in his character that he's going to go there. I think that like there are some other shows. So say for example, I don't know if you've seen like Castlevania on Netflix. The art style is actually maybe somewhat similar to ours. Like I think it's somewhat maybe superficially similar to like what we'll be doing in some aspects, like at a very very high level. Elf might like maybe correct me from a artist technician standpoint, but it's like ballpark. But for me, which is not a criticism for anybody who like wrote the show or worked on the show or like likes the show, but for me, Castlevania's narrative is like a bit like nihilistic, right? I think that the kind of main character, he's a bit standoffish. He feels that he's like entitled to something that he didn't get, and kind of like doesn't really care about anyone, but he kind of helps because there's no one else around. But it's just sort of like, to me, the story feels a bit dark. Whereas after I kind of watched that series, one of the things that was really important to me talking to the team is I was like, I want to make sure that we find someone who like has hope, that he teaches us a story that's like uplifting, that it's like there's good in the world, there's evil in the world. He's not a nihilist, and that like being good means that you like take responsibility for yourself, you be strong, and you like try to help the people around you, and that you can make a difference. That it's not just about that like you live on your own and you just like live a life that is easy because you're a wizard and you have all this magic and you have all the money you need and all the power you need. No, it has to be that like to be like a warrior means that you help the people around you. And Derek has this idea of hope just so internalized, and it's just in his character. And I was just, anyway, I'm too excited about it. I'm pretty sure I'm over time.
No, you can absolutely take all the time you need, Donna. Thank you for sharing. So yeah. Let's move on then to sort of what again we briefly touched on earlier, which is about the future. I just want to, perhaps if you can zoom out for us, right? Take the 10,000 feet view. Now, you've stated an ambitious goal tonight, which is to have Forgotten Runes become one of the highest grossing media franchises of all time. You're talking about Pokemon, right? You want to beat Pokemon.
One. Yeah,
right?
Higher than Pokemon,
so,
yeah.
Understandably, that's not going to happen overnight. So what can you share with us about the future of the Forgotten Runes, I suppose, IP umbrella, right? What do the next 5 years look like? Let's talk 5 years.
Yeah. Well, I think that, really, there's basically three anchors for us, right? So it's like the game, the show, and the NFTs would be kind of like the three sort of tripod, right? Okay, so the game, for example, we intend for the Runiverse game to compete with the likes of Axie in terms of its ambition. So for that game, the game economy we're going to be using is most likely is Starknet. So the anchor that we have for that game is every item is an NFT and every resource is a token. And so the idea is that every item in the game, from the commonest wooden sword to the rarest rainbow armor, is going to be an NFT, and that all of the resources that you get are tokens which you can trade on the open market. And sorry, I know we already talked about the game, but no one has really done these game economies for say World of Warcraft, right? People are already buying and selling items on eBay, but they try to shut it down all the time. And no one has really tried to make an MMO RPG that's super fun, that really embraces that model of cryptocurrency where you can own your own items. So we expect that game to be huge because it's going to be really fun, and it's free to play, by the way. You don't have to own a Wizard NFT to play the game. So the game, one massive anchor. The second would be the show. So again, I know that it feels maybe somewhat sort of unbelievable to say that we plan on getting a AAA level show for our NFT project on one of the major streamers, but that's what we're doing. That's what we're planning on doing. We don't have a buyer. I'm not trying to promise that I can't promise that a buyer will pick it up, right? So maybe we don't. Buyer beware, whatever. But what I can tell you is that Elf has sold a pilot to Nickelodeon before. Bear has sold a show to Fox before. We have the deal with Titmouse already, and they know how to sell shows. They produce the trailer for us, and we have a deal with them. And we have Derek, it's not like he's just a consultant that we're paying money to write a script, and then it's just sort of we just pay him money and then use his name for some sort of marketing thing. No, us and Derek and Titmouse are partners on the show, and so we're all three of us doing it together to put together what they call as a treatment, which is kind of a pitch for the show this summer, and we're going to start pitching the show to streamers, that we can get meetings with, because Derek and Titmouse have agents, and we're be meeting with streamers to pitch the show. And whatever, I don't promise that any of those buyers are going to pick it up, but if they want an animated Wizard show, that will start production as soon as we can close that deal. Ideally, we want to have a deal for that by the end of the calendar year. So that said, even if we get a deal in best case scenario, right, it still ends up being maybe 18 months before anybody sees it, which is, of course, an eternity in NFT time, right? So I think we're going to want to work there to try to kind of externalize the process as much as possible, right? Traditionally, these kinds of shows are very secretive. Hollywood doesn't want to share anything until it's out. I think my goal, which is not the deciding factor, but my goal would be that we would share as much as we possibly can about the creative process at every step along the way. So the game, the show, and then of course the third part is the NFTs, which is I love doing things with NFTs that no one has done before. I don't think anyone has done what we did with the Sacred Flames and Souls before. I don't know that anyone's done what we did with Beasts before. We have ideas for Beast Season 2 that has this sort of play to earn mechanic, and it'll be really fun for the Beast owners. I'm not going to get into it yet, but it's really important to me that we are playing with mechanics and systems that no one has ever done before in the NFT space. and it's fun and it's interesting with lore, and it's like non-dilutive to the core holders, and that like people are able to trade those tokens if they want to, and it adds to the universe, right? That's the thing for us. One of the reasons why you don't see Forgotten Runes double the size of the tokens through airdrops is because that's just a losing strategy. Like, you can inflate okay, you double it once, fine. You double it a second time, okay, that's like quite a lot. Are you going to double it a third time, fourth time, right? Have you never heard the story of the chessboard where you put 1 grain of rice on it one day and then 2 grains the next day, right? You can't fit there's not enough grains of rice in the universe, right? And so this idea that you're going to airdrop your way into something interesting or to a brand that people love for 100 years is like just not going to happen. And so I think this idea that we keep creating characters that our community builds on, and then we create expressions of those characters, and then they're able to commercialize them, is this like, I don't know, it's basically a new model for intellectual property and basically like storytelling. So I mean, there's others too, right? Like, we're doing merch and we're doing comic books, and I'm sure there's a lot of other stuff. But those would be like really the 3 things that's not 10 years out. Okay, maybe we don't get number 1 on the franchise list through those 3 things, but that's enough to keep us busy for the rest of the year.
Gotcha. You got it. And that's very cool. It's great to know where your head's at. And, I have to say, again, just massive kudos to you and, of course, your entire team. Essentially, you've been one of the earliest projects to champion decentralized world building, and it's quite clear that that's still a core tenet of your project today. So it's incredible to see you've kept the faith, and it's incredible to keep to see you continuing your success, to be very honest with you, Dada. So again, a very big thank you for joining us here today. Look, we are just about coming up to an hour and a half here, so it is unfortunately, we are essentially getting to a close. But again, a very big reminder to everybody out there: the Forgotten Runes Wizards Cult have their warriors minting on the 11th of May on a Dutch auction. Starting price 2.5 ETH, going down to 0.6, ticking down at 0.05 ETH every 10 minutes. So that's a 6-hour stretch. A bit of a long haul there, Dada. I'm not gonna lie. If you
think about that, one thing I want to make a point about with that
yes,
auction is that it's lowest price. It's refunding, right? So if you decide to buy it, buy when you're comfortable, right? But like if you buy it, whatever, 2.3, and then it drops to 1.3, you'll get a refund at the end of phase 1.
Gotcha. So fair. It's that lowest price Dutch auction, I believe it is, as that's stated on your site. So you got it. So that's there, everyone. Make sure you're checking them out. Do not sleep on the Forgotten Runes Wizards Cult. I think. I don't know. I'm so bullish on this, Dada. It's been absolutely phenomenal speaking with you today. Again, a very big thank you, and of course, a very big thank you to our listeners. Dada, did you have any closing comments for our listeners?
No, thank you so much.
No worries. In that case, we are taking it into a wrap here. Once again, this has been Visual with Mick, your Metaverse HQ hosts, and of course with Dada from Forgotten Runes. Thank you again for fielding our questions here today. It's clear to see the amount of passion you have for the project, and I'm incredibly excited to see where the Forgotten Runes Wizards Cult goes in the future. Make sure you check them out on Twitter at Forgotten Runes. Until next time, everyone, this has been Visual with Mick, of course, as always, for Metaverse HQ. Take care, and we'll see you next time.